Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chairman Jim Scannell and Chair-elect Randy Smith.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our closing general session. Hopefully you've had a great couple days.
It's been a busy few days here in Las Vegas, and we hope you've benefited from the education and networking opportunities made available to you through CoreNet Global, and our many speakers, sponsors, exhibitors, volunteer leaders, and staff. Let's give them all a round of applause.
Yes, it seems that our once-a-year summit model is working here in North America, as evidenced by the more than 2,500 attendees who joined us, including 575 first-time participants.
I think it was the motivational speech you provided at the opening general session there, Jim. That really sealed the deal.
Right. Well, let me tell you something. We're just trying to set the bar a little bit higher for when Randy steps into the chair role at the end of our next global summit in Singapore. We never know what the staff is going to come up for Randy next year in D.C.
I'm up to the challenge, if not the theatrics, and look forward to building momentum that we've experienced with you at the helm. I join with our board and our entire membership in thanking you for your leadership and service. And I welcome the opportunity to work with members and staff in support of our strategic priorities next year.
You know, I am quite proud of all we've done as an organization, and I say that we because as a member organization, it's really everyone. And the focus that everybody's had on adding value really in 5 key areas that we've focused on over the past year. First, we've been working to ensure that the companies for our members receive the value for their employees' engagement in CoreNet Global, because that's really the key.
That's right, Jim. We're still an individual member organization, but the companies we serve are equally important. New initiatives like our new benchmarking service is a great example. We now have more than 26 companies participating in 5 cohorts across technology, of which Oracle is a member, financial services, manufacturing, insurance, and now retail. The launch of our corporate real estate demand side index in partnership with Emory University and our advocacy efforts, including a comment letter to FASB. These also raise the profile of our profession and professional association in mainstream business media and help us add value to our enterprises.
You know, the second area we've really been focusing on over the past year has been to expand our global footprint. And we've really had an emphasis on China and India.
We've experienced significant growth in China following a successful summit in Shanghai in March, and we'll hold a sustainability conference in Beijing next month. We're also working to reinvigorate our India chapter and build the pipeline of talent there. We've developed a new partnership with the Royal Chartered Institute of Chartered Surveyors online learning platform where we'll deliver our core fundamentals course.
You know, the third area that we've been focusing on has been transforming our global summit model, as evidenced by the many new elements that you saw introduced here and were also used at our highly rated and attended Amsterdam Global Summit. Please join me in thanking the staff and the many volunteers who helped make this event possible. The fourth focus area that we've been working on has been partnering with the key support functions in companies, including HR and IT.
We recognize that playing well in our own corporate sandboxes with other support functions is vital and strengthens the value that we bring to our companies. That's why we formed a task force to build bridges with those functions, such as HR, IT, finance, legal, and procurement. This task force is working on a series of white papers, and we hope to develop an interdisciplinary conference in the coming year.
The fifth and final area that we have been focused on has been leadership development.
In addition to the traditional tactical and topical training that CoreNet offers, we acknowledge that soft skills training is needed and wanted by our members who aren't often tapped internally to go through executive level leadership training programs. That's why we launched our Leaders Edge Conference and the vertical market focused Meeting of the Mind series earlier this year, and have more dates scheduled in the coming months.
Ultimately, where we're trying to get is we want to be your indispensable resource for corporate real estate education and networking. And we want you to be the indispensable to the success of your enterprises.
And I'd say we're well on our way to accomplishing exactly that. Following some successful strategic planning discussions we had as a board this week, I am confident we will take our mission forward. And we'll do so with a really solid financial footing, thanks to strong stewardship of our members' contributions and support of our many stakeholders around the world.
And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Barb Desmond from Cushman & Wakefield, our summit polling sponsor, to share their polling results.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm representing Cushman & Wakefield to give you the results of the Workplace Transformation Barometer Survey. Now, that's quite a mouthful. I do have to say that we were overwhelmed with the responses. As of last night, we had over 380 responses from the group, so that's terrific. Before I get to the results, I'm going to share with you some of the preliminary information, but I'd like to just share a little Vegas story with you, and no, it doesn't need to be censored. I was walking down Vegas Boulevard the other night, and I came across a storefront, glass, floor to ceiling, and all the pedestrians walking by, and inside there's some chairs, and there's these mannequins sitting in the chairs, and I saw a wedding dress, a wedding veil. I thought, wow, what's this? And it was called a pop-up wedding chapel. And I thought, what's next? A pop-up workplace? I would really enjoy something like that, working on the road all the time. I'm often stuck sitting on the floor trying to make my laptop work and connectivity. So workplace is important to me and the changes. We understand that the innovation that you see is good to bring into your workplace planning, but you need the data. And that's what I'd like to share with you is the results of the survey. Now, before I do, I'm going to encourage all of you to still participate in our survey. It is not shutting down until Monday. So I would encourage you for one reason. If you do, we send you the white paper, and it's going to share the results not only from this survey, but also from Europe and Asia, which I think would be hugely beneficial for you to take back and implement into your planning and look at the cultural nuances in the differences in the survey region to region. And I will be announcing the winner of our $500 certificate at the end of the ceremony for those who participated to date. So on to the first slide that we're going to share with you. This slide represents how far has the workplace change been in North America. And I was first a little surprised at the 12% there that say that they have completed it. But then I was realizing, no, it's an evolution. I think that number will always be low. It doesn't ever stop. It continually evolves. And what I was exceptionally pleased was to see that 65% are in planning and doing the changes. That is terrific progress. I've been in the industry a long time, and I can tell you in 10 years that number has changed a lot, which is to the benefit of all of us in this room. The second slide now relates to what was the success of the program. And what I was really pleased with was 0 failed. Now, I can remember 10 years ago when that number would be a lot higher. There was a couple of attempts at it and it failed. So this is a true indication that progress is being made and substantial progress. We have over 52% that say their objectives are being met and even exceeded in 10%. I think these slides will be valuable for you as you go back to your office and look at these results. These are only a few flavoring. There's more in the survey. So how effective has change been in helping organizational goals? Of course, that's all what we're trying to achieve here. How are we helping our organizations evolve? Look at those numbers. 80% said effective and highly effective. That is truly a positive response. Going to the next slide, top workplace elements implemented in North America. I don't think this is a surprise to anybody. We can see that there's office planning, open planning, flexible layouts, furniture. I don't think this is a surprise to us. The numbers and percentages are quite high. I think that's terrific. And I'd like to see, as we do this survey year over year, see the numbers in the other areas grow. One thing I'd like to see on this is the increased communication tools, the chat, the Twitter. I am certain that when we look at the numbers from Asia and Europe, you'll see it much higher because they've got different languages, 40 different countries in Europe. I'm sure their use of the chat is much greater than it is here in North America. So I hope you'll find that statistic interesting as well. And on to our last slide. This one was a surprise to me, really. Out of the 5 categories, there was only 10% variance. And I was watching this last night because I thought, nah, this stat can't be right. It can't be right. And I kept watching it, and it stayed the same. The highest is resistance from managers. I mean, when we know what our blocks are, we can plan for it. I think that that's something that's probably overlooked. I would have thought funding would have been one of the largest #1 ranked issues for our obstacles. So I hope that you can see from the data here that this information will help you go back, present to your executives, and then lay out your plan on how you deal with implementing workplace. So I'd like to announce the winner of the gift certificate, and it's Wilson Martina from Diageo, and we will be in touch with you, Wilson, in that regard. So congratulations to Wilson. And also, I'd very much like to thank you on behalf of Cushman & Wakefield and all my colleagues for CoreNet putting on such an excellent summit here. It's been terrific. I've had a great time. And also to all of you who participated in the survey, we appreciate your contribution. And again, I encourage you to respond to the survey if you haven't done so you can get the white paper at the end. Thank you very much.
And now, for a look beyond the horizon, please welcome thought leader, technology entrepreneur, and author, Scott Klosowski.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, would you bring your attention to me for a feast for your eyes to see, an explosion of catastrophe, like nothing you've ever seen before. Watch closely as I open this door. Your jaws will be on the floor. After this, you'll be begging for more. Welcome to the show.
Okay, good evening. It's almost evening. I just have to walk around. I just got to get used to this for just a second. Let me just to share just one thing with you, a little bit about what I do, so that you understand the context of what I'm getting ready to share with you. I spend my life going in and out of different organizations, helping them learn how to be world-class with how they use technology. And so it's an interesting thing. I've spent over 30 years in technology myself, and so it gives me a pretty good viewpoint, right, to be able to understand what the distance is between organizations that I get to see and world class at doing technology. And there isn't really a grade card for that, and so our firm developed a grade card, but after being in and out of so many in different countries all over the world, different sizes, different industries, you start to get a pretty good idea of what is good and what's not working so well with technology. And so what I wanted to try to do is, with our time, I wanted to share with you just a lot of thoughts about what we're seeing that is not so much even futuristic, right? But the things that are coming up that we need to pay attention to, and the things that you can really use that will separate you, right, from, I guess, the herd of people that are using technology. So let's start with this. There's an interesting type of impact that technology is having on the economy today. And this is a word that we're starting to hear more and more, right? Digital Darwinism, or technology Darwinism. And the concept behind this is technology is having so much of an impact on every kind of organization today that if you don't learn how to apply it, if you don't have leaders who understand how to use technology as kind of an X factor in whatever you're doing, in some cases it's literally fatal, right? Companies just lay down and die. Now, some people say to me, well, gee, Scott, that's a bit harsh, that companies just kind of go bankrupt. Yeah, they actually do, and that's what creates this kind of survival of the fittest that people have been talking about around technology Darwinism. And so I wanted to just, make sure we're clear on that, about what the consequences are when you don't figure out how to be world-class with using technology tools. And so this is something that we see in just about every industry we walk into, is that there is a pace of change in that industry. Right? There is a pace of change that technology is driving. How we connect with customers, how we develop products, how we market what we have, how we do the back office tasks, how we do transactions, right? There is a pace of change. Now, if your organization is moving at slower than the pace of change, right, it creates what's called a technology risk gap. And so it introduces risks in a few different interesting areas. For example, just ability to connect with customers well, which I'll talk about a lot more here today. Okay, that is a tough issue today. How do you connect with customers? We have a younger generation coming up today, for instance, that doesn't love to talk on the phone. They just don't. If you have kids, you know what I'm talking about, right? But we have a generation coming up that would much rather text or even email than talk on the phone. And so it's tougher and tougher to connect, right, with the generations that are coming up, but it's just tough to connect with people in general these days. All right? Or you look at the problem of just getting good people to work for you. One of the things that we're finding is that companies who do not keep up with the pace of change, they look like they're kind of the Flintstones, right, to the A players. And so employees who are really, really good employees, they get a sense pretty quickly about, hey, are you, if I use this metaphor, right, the Flintstones, or are you like the Jetsons? And if you're like the Flintstones, the A players don't want to work with you. And so we've talked to HR departments that have said basically, hey, the price you pay for being looked at like you're slow is that the A players really don't want to work for you. There's a really interesting statistic right now that if you look at Gen Y, only 7% of Gen Y actually works for a Fortune 500 company. A much higher percentage is in startups, and especially the A players, the really smart ones, tend to go to the startups and don't want to work for what they perceive to be a big organization. So there's a price to pay if you don't keep up with technology. Now, one way that you can look at this is to look at it this way. I started back in 1980, okay? And so if we look at technology from kind of 1980 up to now, what's happened is we get more and more of it all the time. We get new devices, we get new pieces of software, we get new concepts, we get new equipment, right? We're getting new things all the time. But what that's caused is it's caused a bit of chaos inside of organizations and industries. And we're seeing more and more is that every industry is starting to hit an inflection point. Now, if I were to give you an example, we could go back to even the mid-90s, and we could say when the airlines got PCs and the internet, and the airlines could connect directly to travelers, they completely disintermediated the travel agents. And so that's when the inflection point hit the travel space. Now, since then, what we've learned is that there are always winners and losers in every industry, right? As technology hits the industry and creates at some point an inflection point, in other words, enough technology comes together in that industry that it dramatically changes how it operates, all right, it causes you to have winners and losers. Either you get technology mastery, right? You learn how to use technology as a tool very well, or a lot of the organizations just go into a death spiral. Now, not to sound negative about that, I mean, when you think about that concept that technology hits an industry and creates an inflection point, there are wonderful opportunities. So there are winners and there are losers. Now, I spent an awful lot of my career working with executives, right? Typically 50 years old and older, leaders of organizations who didn't grow up with technology. And one of the things that I'm just absolutely on a mission is to try to get people to understand what it is about technology that dramatically changes an industry and what it takes to make sure you stay out in front so that you survive and so you prosper. In other words, how do you identify the opportunities that you should be taking advantage of? The consequences when you don't understand what technology is going to do when it hits this inflection point are deadly. So I have all kinds of case studies. I'll just show you two of them. Right? If you look at the publishing space, and you looked at three players, Amazon came along, they started selling books online, and then in 2007 they came out with a Kindle. So they went electronic, they went ebook. They weren't the first. Sony had an ebook out before them, right? But they were the first one to really do it on a mass way. Now, Barnes & Noble, they waited 2 years, and then they came out with the Nook. So after 2 years, they're like, well, we better not try to fight this ebook thing. And so they kind of capitulated and joined the party. But you can see what happened to their revenues. Really tailed off badly in 2010, came back a little bit in 2012 because of their electronic division. Now, they're still struggling, but at least they're alive, right, which is better than Borders, because you all probably know, right, Borders went straight down the tubes. Now, the thing to think about with this situation is we have an awful lot of companies that have ridden the plane straight into the ground. Now, they had a board of directors, theoretically were smart. They had an executive team, theoretically smart. And Borders just laid it down and died. Okay? And we can do this all day long. I can show you case studies from different industries, right? Winners and losers. Let's start off with the loser, in this case, HMV, right? A very large music entity, had hundreds and hundreds of music stores, right? Went downhill. Sony Music, Sony had the Walkman, Sony had the Axe, Sony had all kinds of things in the music space. You can see what happened to them. And then you got winners, right? You have Apple, who is a computer company who is not even in the music space, who comes out, takes the entire retail music business away from the music industry, right? And then you got startups like Pandora, okay? There are winners and losers. And the striking thing is, in these twists of fate sometimes, earlier this year, almost to the same month, iTunes sells its 25 billionth song. At about the same time, HMV goes bankrupt. After 91 years, by the way. Now, again, I got slide after slide after slide. I could talk about this, but you know, just to refresh everybody's memory, Kodak. You ever heard of them? 135,000 employees. I mean, this was a company that had patents on digital photography, patents. And so they knew it was coming, but they couldn't get off the film crack, right? And so they just, laid it down. Sad. But, here's a couple. I just say, I'm getting older now, so I have to do some that are age-based. And this this shows who's young and who's older. How many people here, I just want you to raise your hand, how many people here's mother bought out of the Spiegel catalog? Okay, you're all old. Let's just establish that. So did my mom, right? And Spiegel's gone now. Spiegel went bankrupt. They were around since the turn of the century and couldn't make the change over into e-commerce. All right, we'll try another one, see if we can pick up some other one. How about Olin Mills? Anybody get their picture taken by Olin Mills when you were young? There you go, you're on the border of old. It's bordered. Olin Mills is gone. Polaroid gone. Right? Blockbuster? Really? You thought you were going to rent silver discs forever? Like nobody at a board meeting one day said, hey, this internet thing, what if they could download movies off the internet? They wouldn't need to rent our silver discs anymore. Really? Nobody said that. Okay? Which brings me to the point about leadership. Okay? I don't know what you're laughing about. Now, and I tell you, there are things I get frustrated with. One of the things I get frustrated with quite a bit is that I told you I work with 50 and 60-year-old leaders. They're the ones that have the strategic control. They're the ones that have budget control. And so if you want to know what's happening with technology as an X factor in every industry, and why we're not reaching into the technology toolbox and better at it, it's leadership. In fact, when we go in and we look at an organization to see here's they are and here's world class, and you say, what's the first thing you notice about why they're here and world class is here? The first thing you notice is they have a C-suite, right? They have executives who don't understand technology concepts. They don't. It doesn't matter how many people are telling them to do something different. Like, they don't understand it. They didn't grow up with it. So when you say something to them like big data, they don't really know what big data is. Like, they go, well, that's a lot of data. And that's the right answer, right? But they really don't understand what big data is as a philosophy, or how to use it, how to implement it, how to use it strategically, or how to buy it, right? So we got a lot of what we call in our firm dead leaders walking, right? In other words, you're still a leader, you're just not really leading. And here's the kind of things people say at times to us. They go, Scott, we're already successful. You don't understand. We're making a lot of money. We must be okay. Why should we need to work on these new technologies? Why should we try these things out? Why should we be on the edge? Why should we be, in front of our competition? Why should we lead our peer group? We're making money. And I have to remind them, hey, Kodak was making money right up until the year they weren't. Blockbuster was making money right up until the year they weren't. Everybody was making money up until the year they weren't. Now, we got a lot of organizations like banks, for instance, banks who think that the party's going to go on forever. Banks think that you're going to give them your money and you get it back, right? They pay you interest at 1%, 1.5%, but then they loan it to you at 7%, and so they make that spread. It's the best gig ever. And if you don't give them enough money to loan out, they just get some from the government. It's a great gig. And they think it's going to go on forever. No one's going to compete with them in banking. Or what about universities? Universities are like online learning. What do we have to be worried about? We have $7 billion invested in buildings. And by the way, we just keep upping the rates to go to college. Oh, and the student debt is higher than credit card debt. I don't know if you know that. It's crazy to me. Student debt higher than credit card debt in this country. And they think that's going to go on forever. And I'll go, really? Really? Online learning. Right? Play it out. Play it out. They don't get it, right? But they think because they're making money, hey, we're going to be okay. Or, hey, I can just outsource all of this to technology people. Why do I need to learn this? Now, if you're saying that to yourself right now, like, hey, I'm good at what I do. I only got 3-4 years left or 5 years left. Why should I learn about all this stuff? And if you want to be a relevant leader, then you got to learn what's going on with technology. Or industries will say to me, people within industries, Scott, that inflection point, it's not going to hit us. Really. Like insurance companies. We deal with insurance companies right now a lot. And they'll go, we've been making money for decades. I don't think we're going to hit an inflection point. And what they don't understand is it was just unlucky that the travel agents got to go first, right? And then the music industry and the publishing industry. They think it's all done now. It's not done now, okay? So what I want to do is just try to spend the rest of my time sharing some ideas with you, that would help you maybe a bit with your legacy, the legacy that you will leave as leaders. And so this is something that people that know me know I preach about this all the time. I believe leaders today are transitional leaders. I believe that they are leading organizations in a time of transition from when we were paper-based and primarily human-based, right? We used a lot of people and a lot of paper to get things done. And we are transitioning into a world that is much more data extensive, much more automated. In other words, there will be a blending of humans and technology in really sophisticated ways. Okay? You are going to leave a legacy. I mean, at the age you're at, in the time in history that you are leading, right, or you are working, you will leave a legacy. And that legacy is going to be one of two things. It's either going to be you were the one that helped make that transition in an excellent way to a highly automated, technology-augmented world, or the legacy you'll leave is, thank God he is gone. Thank God. He's been holding us back for 10 years. And they're just waiting for that young person to make a diving save and catch the falling knife on the company because you've screwed it up, right? You will leave a legacy. So here's some things you might think about. If you want to be world-class at technology, I will spend the rest of the time sharing some thoughts around that. First thing, as a leader, you have to be high beam. All right, high beam means you can see out into the future accurately. That's all being high beam leader is. Low beam's not bad, by the way. It's a continuum. Low beam is management. It's not bad. It's just they don't have the responsibility of having to look out, right, years in advance and be accurate. They just enact a plan. But leaders have to have high beams, right? They have to be able to see out into the future accurately. Now let me show you why technology is an interesting Rorschach test of this. So here's a technology that's pretty hot these days. Lots being written, right, about Google Glasses.
Here are the basics of how to use glass. This is your touchpad. It runs from your temple to your ear. Tap the touchpad to wake up glass. You should see the display above your line of sight. Adjust it to see everything. The home screen shows a clock. This is your timeline. It's a row of cards. Things to the left are happening now or coming up, like the weather, an upcoming flight, or an event in your calendar. You can tap on any card to see more. Swipe down anywhere to go back to the timeline. Cards to the right of the home screen are from the past, for example, messages, videos, or photos. Tap on a photo to share it, and choose one of your friends. Swipe down to go back to standby, and have fun exploring.
right, so there's a technology called wearable. Let's mix it with another technology. This is called brain-computer interface, a device that you put on your head. It learns, right, how you think by the electrical waves coming out of your scalp, and then it allows you to control a computer just by thinking.
I'm here today to introduce you to Muse, the sleek new 4-sensor headband from Interaxon that gives you a new way to interact with technology. Since 2007, Interaxon's been building a reputation as a leader in brain-computer interface technology.
Every once in a while, there's an innovator who completely remakes reality.
Muse is the realization of those years of effort, insight, and innovation. This is...
All right, so if you're high beam, you can start saying things to yourself like, well, hey, we already have this stuff. Like, this is not science fiction. We've got this stuff now. So let's put it together if you're high beam and you say, well, how long is it going to be till they just mix those? And so now I got a device that when I put it on, now I could just look at you and I could think profile. Boom, your profile flies into my vision. Hey, that'll be pretty cool. But think about education. Right? What's it going to be like testing kids? When kids show up in class with these, and they look down at a test, and all I have to do is think, and the answers fly in front of their vision. Now, if you were a teacher, you're an administrator, you would say that that was cheating, right? That's cheating. And so you're going to ban them. Does that sound familiar? Again, when I was a kid, they banned calculators because calculators were cheating, and then like 5 years later, they were required. And then when my son was young, they banned laptops, and then 5 years later, it was required. And then they banned mobile devices, and now they're starting to be required in some schools, right? You'd think we'd learn, right? But if you're high beam, you're able to look at technology trends and go, wow, they're going to make a difference in an industry. So for example, let's go on. Remember I told you about bankers think it's going to go on forever? This was a patent that Apple filed for doing banking through iTunes. Now, if you saw this patent, and Apple's doing banking through iTunes, and you were a bank, would that make you nervous? Man, it should. Right? This is why it's so important to be high beam, to be able to look out into the future accurately and understand how technology is going to change things. So let me give you a bit of a future view. Okay? This is kind of a critical concept that will help you a little bit think about what technology is going to do. So technology can be thought of as always creating connections that have never been done before, right? In humanity, we've never had this connection before. So Web 1.0 was connected organizations or websites. And when we got that, obviously it changed a lot of things in the economy, good and bad. It allowed people to sell all over the world with e-commerce, but it got travel agencies killed, right? But it connected organizations were websites connecting to their customers. Hey, we moved on to Web 2.0. It's where we are today. We're kind of fading into Web 3.0. Web 2.0 is connected people. Today, any one of you can talk to 1 billion people for free, instantly. Like, humanity has never had this before. Like, seriously, you could light up a blog tomorrow, and if you had something really cool to say, you could have 5 million people reading your blog. And how much would it cost you to do that? 0. You're right. Right? We've never had this in humanity before. And the sad thing is companies are wasting this, by the way. From a marketing standpoint, just wasting this capability to talk to so many people, what we call the organizational voice. Now, we're fading into Web 3.0. Web 3.0 is connected devices. So we've connected organizations, we connected people, now we're connecting devices. Now, this is called pervasive computing, or the Internet of Things, or the hot phrase now is M to M, all right, machine to machine. Right? And what happens is devices are all internet connected, devices are all intelligent, they talk to each other, right? And then when I say devices, we're talking about light switches, HVAC, your car, televisions, appliances, right? The sprinkler system, your pool heater, every device having some amount of intelligence and talking to each other over the internet. And it will, what they say a lot, and I agree with this, it'll feel like the devices have come alive. So for example, my daughter just turned 16. Right? In this world, what will happen is when she gets in my car, the car will know it's her. And because the car knows it's her, the radio will not go above 75 decibels. The speed limit, the car will max out at 65 miles an hour, no matter how hard she presses on the gas pedal. And the best thing of all is, the car will not drive outside of a 30-mile radius of my house. The engine dies, right? It's an intelligent device, right? But every device will be intelligent. Your lights in the building, the HVAC systems in the building. You know, I work with a client that's built what's called BI, Business Intelligence for Buildings, BI for buildings. They monitor everything in buildings. They monitor the CO2 levels in the rooms, and they adjust the HVAC on the CO2 levels. Like the building is almost alive. All right, Web 4.0, connected information systems or connection platforms, right? So this is a world where every organization connects to all kinds of other organizations' data flow so they can do more predictive analysis instead of forensic data work, which is what we do today. Like today, we do so much forensic data work, and we're struggling just to get up to real time. But in a world where your organization can automatically be connected to the weather service so that you know what's going to happen with the weather and you know what the weather impact is going to be on your building or on your product or on your sales, right? And it's all predictive analysis, you know, that's a connected information platform world. Data flowing like data just doesn't flow today. Web 5.0 is humology. We'll talk more about humology later, but humology is the concept that humans and technology are integrated at very deep levels. In other words, now you have that brain-computer interface. It's subdermal. You just look at a screen and think, and the screen does what you want. You know, you've got retinal projection, you know, and this will be fairly normal. Now, the thing I want you to understand about this, about connections, what is going to happen to us is that people and devices are going to literally all start connecting in a way that forms a net. I mean, literally a net that connects us all.